I feel like there's very delightful news as of right now when it comes to Hedera. And what is that? Not too long ago, it was announced that something called Aero, and more specifically, the full name is Aero Technologies, how they joined, allegedly, Hedera's council. Now, why is this amazing? It's because on a post on X, it said that with $28 billion in revenue in 2024, and I'm assuming they're talking about Aero here, but even besides that, it said how Aero is now helping govern Hedera and bringing global supply chains on chain. Now, why is this good? It's because quite essentially through this, I feel like this is kind of expanding a little bit Hedera's horizon in the supply chain management market because, of course, I'm assuming that Aero is bringing a lot of expertise potentially to this. I've never heard about Aero, but you know what? I still think this is very amazing for the future of Hedera because even if we take a look at the supply chain management market, we'll see that according to Polaris Market Research, that market right there is expected to be worth over $58 billion in value by 2030. I mean, just think about that, right? That's very massive right there. Sure, it may not be as big as what the AI market is predicted to be worth. Yeah, sure, it may not be as big as what, maybe the DeFi market is expected to be worth by that year. I'm totally aware of that, but I still think this is good nonetheless because it showcases that Hedera has a lot of possibilities, maybe because we're talking about a very special project. Again, Hedera Hashgraph. It doesn't utilize traditional blockchain technology. It uses something called a directed acyclic graph, which many people arguably do prefer over traditional blockchain technology due to its amazing scalability, energy consumption, which many people think is very low, and not to mention amazing data storage capabilities in terms of improved data storage, I would say, when compared to the traditional blockchain technology. And keep in mind, Hedera has a very amazing governing council. Its governing council allegedly includes the likes of Google, which is, of course, very famous for using YouTube. So I'm assuming, of course, we all know Google. Not to mention as well, we take a look at something like Mondelez, right? Mondelez is very massive. Their brands do include like Oreo. I do really like Oreo, not to mention as well something called Cliff, the Cliff bar. So that's very amazing. And also LG and many others, right? So when I take a look at something like this, when it comes to, again, Aero, I do like the direction in which Hedera is heading. And we have to think about how when it comes to supply chain management, there's pretty much one go-to project that many people think about when they think about that market. And what is that project? That is something called VeChain. Now, I'm very bullish on VeChain, don't get me wrong. But if we take a look at the VeChain Thor blockchain, I get it ever since 2018 and has had allegedly zero network outages, so it's very reliable. But then we have to take a look at, again, Hedera Hashgraph, a directed acyclic graph. So what could potentially allow for these type of enterprises or companies that are looking to kind of expand their supply chain management market, but then kind of enter this space, right? Arguably, I would say maybe a directed acyclic graph could be a better option because, again, it just has much more, I would arguably say, advantages when compared to traditional blockchain technology. It doesn't mean VeChain is going to be obsolete because, of course, it has a very good following, very good fan base. When we take a look at its primary native token called VET, it is listed in a bunch of major exchanges. So I'm totally aware of that. But again, I think news like this really showcases that Hedera, it could very well have a lot of use cases, right? Not only just for NFTs, DeFi, but then also for places like AI, which I talked about in one of my previous videos. Not to mention now we're seeing, allegedly, maybe the supply chain management market. On top of Hedera being very amazing, $3, that is still my price target for HBAR during this bull run. And if it were to go to that price, considering current circulating supply, the market cap at that point would actually be around $127 billion. That's around a 17x from here. But I don't think it's that unrealistic because as of right now, I get it. Altcoins, they're not doing the best as of right now, but HBAR is no stranger to this going on, right? A bunch of altcoins out there are not doing good. And ever since I started acquiring HBAR, it's actually higher than before, or should I say way higher actually. So would it make sense for me to just give up on HBAR like that? No. But even besides that, why isn't this market cap too ridiculous? It's because something like BNB, back in 2021, which arguably, in my opinion, isn't as revolutionary as this. Like when I take a look at, for instance, the BNB chain, I don't think it could be argued as being more revolutionary than Hedera. But even besides that, back in 2021, BNB reached a market cap of over $100 billion. So could HBAR maybe do the same, at least this time around? If let's say there is a fully fledged type of altcoin season, I don't see why not. Many people out there are arguing and saying, oh, BNB could maybe go to like 300 billion in market cap, whatever the case may be. But then again, we can't tell the future. But I'm just saying, if BNB does that, why can't something like HBAR potentially do what it did, reach over $100 billion in market cap, like what BNB did back in 2021? This is just my perspective, but I'm just saying. None of this is a guarantee though, because I can't tell the future. But I just don't see why there wouldn't be an altcoin season. I mean, there's so many bullish factors, right? Like historically, time and time again, we have seen an altcoin season eventually. Not saying that every single altcoin is going to do good, but we have seen a moment in which we've seen some altcoins do pretty good. So this time around, why can't something like HBAR, which is a very established altcoin with a very good fan base, listed in a bunch of major exchanges, Hedera has a very good community, I don't see why something like HBAR would kind of do bad really if, let's say, there is a fully fledged type of altcoin season. But it's just a waiting game at this point because usually altcoins is a worst case scenario. They typically peak around 18 months after a Bitcoin halving event. And the last Bitcoin halving event happened in April of last year. So we had 18 months on top of that. That's around October this year. The way to take a look at it is that even though that date may never be accurate because we just don't know, that's just based off history, the only thing I can control is myself. And that's just by still believing in the projects that I think are good. And just by dollar cost averaging, just any time and income, acquiring, holding, and just waiting, even though I'm not telling anyone to buy HBAR by any means, that's not the case, right? I can only speak on my behalf. But the way I view it as well is that Hedera really has, I think, a lot of possibilities because if we're talking about, blockchain gaming, why wouldn't Hedera be a good place? If we're talking about AI again, why wouldn't Hedera be a good place? Supply chain management. I just think Hedera has a lot of possibilities in terms of what it could be potentially used for. But then we haven't really seen that yet, right? A lot of attention is more so on like Ethereum, of course, Solana. We take a look at BNB chain. I'm totally aware of that, but I feel like maybe as time goes on, Hedera could maybe be looked at as one of the premier places to be. However, again, only time will tell, but I just don't see why not because I think it's so revolutionary. On top of that, there's over 600 million crypto owners currently, according to Crypto.com research. So with that many crypto owners, which allegedly is more than ever before in history, I don't see why this bull run would be quote unquote over. Because, the way I view it is this. Every single time I've seen FUD and, kind of like not so pleasant news when it comes to the crypto space, like for instance, the Terra Luna crash, the bear market that we saw after the 2021 bull run, the Celsius, situation, the FTX nonsense, right? All of that right there, at the time, it seemed like a very bad thing. But then now that, time has passed, even I don't really care about it anymore. Like, of course, I still remember it, but it's not like it's bothering me or anything like that, right? So then I feel like, again, as time passes on, things usually in the past seem like, oh yeah, it wasn't a big deal, at least to me, those situations, now that I look back at it. Of course, at the time, there was a lot of FUD, but as of right now, it doesn't really feel that way anymore. So this is just my perspective. I get it, things aren't doing the best, but again, $3 when it comes to HBAR wouldn't surprise me whatsoever during this bull run. And make sure to subscribe if you gained value from this video. I'd greatly appreciate it. It's Believe the Captain, and I'll catch y'all on the next one. I'm out. Peace. Bye.